Research Development and Innovation Co-Funding Opportunities webinar. My name is Milda Manomaitite. I'm from the Railway Industry Association. I'm the Innovation Director of the Railway Industry Association. And today this is a follow-up briefing or webinar from our earlier one where representatives from Network Rail, Great British Railways Transition Team and Rail Safety and Standards Board shared their thinking about the next 5 years themes around innovation, research and development, the priorities are where the private sector can support and potentially some co-funding opportunities. So today we'll follow up on that and see if there's how the thinking has developed, and this is your opportunity to ask some questions and meet the people behind it. So what I would like to do now is introduce our speakers, and then I will give a little bit of a RIA update on what's going on within the innovation space, and then we'll launch straight into it. So if Robert, if you could introduce yourself, and then I'll call the others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Milda. Good morning, everyone. Robert Ampoma, I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Network Rail. So the R&D program and R&D strategy within Network Rail, but also looking a bit broader across the industry. It will sits under me, yeah, we'll be talking through what our plans are for CP7. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Rufus?
Thank you very much. I'm Rufus Impey from Great British Railways Transition Team and Strategy and Planning Team, looking at a range of topics for long-term strategy, including research, development and technology.
Excellent. And Luisa?
Luisa Moisio, Director of Research and Development at the Rail Safety and Standards Board, and I've worked closely with Robert and Rufus and others on the CP7 plan, and the work continues because there are not all answers, but it's a good opportunity to give an update now.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So before we go to our speakers, I would like to give you a quick update on what's going on within RIA innovation space. I am responsible of the Unlocking Innovation program, which is a program of activities, articles, comms, events, meetings where we enable the unlocking of innovation, whether it's finding ways to improve the processes or looking for interesting solutions and technologies and meeting different people. So our next event is taking place in Edinburgh in 2 weeks. So if you are around, please do make sure you register. This will be a very exciting event. It's hosted by Heriot-Watt University at the new facility called the National Robotarium, where they test robots. And so you will be able to see all of these robots in the picture, and potentially, if we behave, ask for personal demos as well. And not only that, we will also see a heavy structures lab that is based in Heriot-Watt University. And of course, we will hear from interesting speakers and suppliers on various innovations that are being developed right now. So yeah, that's in 2 weeks, 8th of June in Edinburgh. Please do make sure you register, and we will post a link to the event in the chat. Right, that is it from me, and I will now pass it to Robert to do a bit of an intro.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Milda. And yeah, I think first of all, I'd like to say thank you to RIA and also all our members. I've just put some a slide up, and also all the supply chain members within RIA, and also the academic institutions who have really helped us over the last, it's been almost 2 years now, actually gathering a whole lot of requirements to help us to target the work that we need to do, kind of really aligned with the rail technical strategy, also the WISP, the whole industry strategic plan, but in order to meet the government's objectives and part of the industrial strategy. So some really important work, and it's really been helpful to get galvanize a lot of our thoughts, and it's not just done in isolation from the industry. So I'm going to talk through our plans and where I feel we'll be heading, and the things that we'll be focusing on to kind of provide a bit of a landscape for yourselves and also for the wider industry about things that will be important to us going into CP7. I will caveat that some of the numbers I will show you are subject to change, so don't hold me to account on that one. We'll wait and see what comes out later this autumn when we get the final determination. Okay, so that's the figure. That's probably a headline everyone's been interested in, and this is for England and Wales and Scotland. So it's not just as you probably have seen in the recent publication of the Network Rail Strategic Business Plan. It's essentially for England and Wales, but yeah, that includes a Scotland number as well. As I said, it's subject to confirmation at final determination, so it may change. I hope not. Working very hard with my team to ensure that it doesn't, because I think there's some real benefits, particularly for the long term. So we've outlined our proposals as part of the response to the statement of funds available, which was announced by the government in December last year, to deliver the best railway for our passengers and freight customers. And in order for us to do that, the 165 million of direct investment is something that will help us to reiterate and hit those targets in terms of improving efficiency, value for money, supporting safety, workforce reform and modernisation. And that's a really important feature. We've worked very hard with our trades unions over the last year. It's been quite a difficult time, but we've come out at the end with some really good changes that will help us to modernise, and that's a really important part of this. It will also help us continue good work we've done as part of this current control period in CP6 with our research and development portfolio, which is currently forecast to generate benefits opportunities around 3 times the level of investment over the next 15 to 20 years. So, you know, it's quite substantial amounts. If we get those deployments done of the products and solutions that have been developed either through academia or right through to the supply chain, it will get us some really substantial cost reductions, benefits, and safety improvements. For CP7, the direct investment will also include a first-in-class fund around 54 million, which will enable us to experience a sort of the current control period where we are driving through trying to accelerate deployment, because all the work that we do will not really benefit anyone if it just sits on a shelf. So it's important that deployment is a key part of that, and we're trying to incentivize that through the first-in-class. There's also an opportunity that we're looking to expand on the 165, and we've included an opportunity for leveraging investment through co-funding, through cross-industry collaboration, and also through working with industry partners. So we've earmarked to get an additional fund, and that's working with Europe, that's working with the supply chain, also working cross-industry, so with some of our cross-sector with the likes of National Highways, TfL, to try and get a much broader opportunity by identifying further investment. And our R&D plans will drive, the key point of it is for us to drive cost reductions in terms of OPEX through our performance improvements, workforce reforms, CapEx reductions as well, targeting lower cost designs and renewals, and then keeping people safe. So we need to remove more boots off ballast. Having people in the line of 5 trains is something we can't continue to grow. We need to actually reduce that burden and be more targeted about when we go on the infrastructure. So certainly changing our ways of working and using digital systems to actually help us, including access platforms, access planning systems, and aligning that with how people work on the front line. And then, of course, being environmentally sustainable, where we're using R&D to reduce whole life costs, whole life carbon outcomes. Oh, sorry, there's someone go on mute, please.
So that it's ready for procurement.
That's better, thank you. So, and also driving, one of the key aspects of this as well is also about the customer. So it's really important that we drive customer experience improvements through use of novel passenger, using data to create some novel solutions, improving our services and the end-to-end, as well as the seamless transition to different modes of transport. And I think that's pretty important, listening to what our customers and communities want. And to develop this, you may have seen this certainly at the Re-Innovation. Anyone who attended Re-Innovation conference at the end of March should have seen these. So we've worked, as I said, over the last nearly couple of years, work with our industry stakeholders, work with the supply chain, RSSB, GBRTT colleagues, RIA, academia as well, to build these some common approaches. Again, very important that we align this to rail technical strategy, and being able to do this by developing 8 industry themes which are common across industry, with ourselves, with RSSB, with GBRTT, and associated capabilities which align with that. And you will see that I've identified areas where NetRail leads. And when I say NetRail leads, and Louise will come into this later, it's not necessarily us doing everything in that space. It's actually that collaboration piece, and there will be some elements which RSSB will lead within each of those functions. But broadly speaking, those 8 capabilities, those 8 themes, are defined in such a way that we, you can see where the majority of our activity will be, where we'll be leading, where we'll be working with in partnership. So if I look at some of the areas with traction decarbonisation, NetRail owns only a few trains. Obviously, the majority is freight and passenger services. So we're looking at how we can decarbonise faster, and it's not all electrification. There may be alternative fuels as well. With data and digitization, there's a wealth of expertise out there in the supply chain, with SMEs, with our tier 1 suppliers, and we need to look at how we capitalize and exploit those opportunities to resolve some of those decisions, some of those challenges in a much more coherent way. And that's a key part of, I won't go into loads of detail, but that's a key part of these. And in order for us to actually deliver on those requirements, we need to tackle challenges within each one of those themes, and driving the capabilities that we'll go through. So I'll go into some examples to try and illustrate where our areas of focus will sit as well. So looking at those themes, one of the things I thought would be useful to share is the areas in which we've prioritized our activities, and because something's low, so we're sort of low, medium and high. Because it's low, it doesn't mean we're not doing a lot in that space. It just means looking at the biggest risks and the biggest challenges that we have in terms of safety, cost efficiencies, and sustainability. Those things are going to be where our focus really sits, because we know we need to drive and accelerate some of those activities. So we're currently building a detailed project plans for each one of the work streams. As I said, once we confirmed what funding we'll get, in the background, we're working through a list of our key priorities and areas that we will focus on. But it's some of those activities, the direction of travel in terms of those themes will always still the same, whether it's in this control period or future control periods. We're trying to build a sustainable model that and framework that helps us to drive that. And this will enable us to meet the commitment we've made to the government in terms of targeting our expenditure, and also spending some of our expenditure, about a third of our expenditure on small, medium-sized enterprises as well. And that's a pretty key thing in terms of levelling up and also growth. Our aim predominantly, so in each one of these areas, so we look at optimised and resilient operations, and automation, as well as optimized resilient assets. And our aim really is to provide visibility of the pipeline of challenges that we have and what outcomes we need out of that. So we're not going to start specifying the solutions that we need. We want to engage with the supply chain through our strong relationship with RIA to help us to do that. And Gareth will talk about that towards the end, about some of the ways in which we can do that. But it's important that we work through as a collaborative, as a collective, to actually drive those. And then this provides a bit more of a breakdown, some of the topic areas, so some particular challenges and particular areas we will focus on. So if we look at safety, improving workforce safety with investment in new technologies such as remote devices, we've got geofencing. It's deploying those sort of technologies. A broader use of drone technology. So we've been using drones for the last 4 or 5 years. in Anglo and the railway, but actually it's sort of the beyond visual line of sight is really the sort of the golden nugget that a lot of the business actually needs, and it's how we enable that and then bring that data and that information to an integrated platform, which helps us to actually utilize it from various different things, including looking at how we manage our level crossing safety for the public, improve solutions for things like fiber optics, sensing. So there's a number of areas that we are really focused on that will help to drive safety improvements. Moving on to cost efficiencies, obviously from a cost point of view, reducing our costs and unit rates around signaling, electrification schemes, some of our bigger programs of work that we've got in terms of expanding electrification and targeting achieving a net zero for 2045, 2050. There's a number of specific challenges we have, and it seems like a long time, but actually we know there's not a lot of time left to drive those improvements, and the technology is not quite there yet. So the ability to accelerate that to make those improvements, whether it's looking at alternative fuels like hydrogen, ammonia, and then the infrastructure that's associated with those in terms of charging facilities, refueling facilities, that's hugely important. It's not just about the technology, it's about what enables it to function. Robotics and automation is another key area that we will be focused on. We need to bring more automation into what we do. As I said, boots and ballasts is really something we need to get away from. It's important to reference that we're not going to de-skill people. Actually, we need people to be better skilled to use that level of innovation and that level of technology, and actually understand the basic principles of some of the engineering challenges we face and the operational challenges that we've got as well. So that will drive things like improving traffic management, traffic incident management systems. So we've seen an evolution of TMS, but actually using that to for live incident management as well, and using all the other tools for the infrastructure to enable a better service recovery. There's a number of things we're doing around vehicle monitoring technology. Again, we've started that in this control period, but expanding that to far greater uses as well, whether it's for using that for surveying, using that for managing the infrastructure and making better decisions, and then collating that evidence and that information as part of our better models for the future as well. And then from a carbon point of view, the work we're doing with collaborating with the broader sector across the industry, but also cross-sector, working with the likes of National Highways, and looking at different ways in which we can have better carbon modelling, lower carbon materials, and better solutions that help us to drive out carbon. We're a very carbon intensive industry, and electrifying the network, and most of the network means we're going to be putting a lot of embodied carbon into the infrastructure, and it's how can we reduce that and make it more efficient and more effective. And then of course our challenges with weather resilience and climate change, and making assets more resilient to climate change, particularly when you're looking at heat, hot weather, and how we make our assets last longer as well, so we're not intervening as we get more climate disruption. And then from a digital and train performance point of view, using some of our core intelligence systems, specifically in areas of predictive asset management and monitoring. And there's a lot of information, a lot of developments out there, such as the aviation sector, some of the work they've done on the aviation sector, and using some of those underpinning technologies to transition into rail as well, and improve that better decision making. And that means working closely with us, not developing solutions that that you think the industry wants. And we've got a very important part to play in that, in terms of articulating the actual challenges we've got, so you can the supply chain, the industry can help us to address those, as well as academia to undertake some of that foundational research activities to help us with those. And lastly, of course, there's the 5G comm side. We've got aging infrastructure in terms of GSMR, and we need to look at the path to transition. We've all got the same issue, including across Europe, but it's how we accelerate the development of that and integrate it with some of the other solutions, digital signaling, in-cab solutions, to make that transition much more viable and realistic as well. So as you can see, there are a variety of challenges. There's a different outlook in terms of making our approach to RD&I more sustainable, and collaboration is a key to that. And the only way we can do that is by working with yourselves and helping to deliver those benefits and improvements. So that's it from me. I will hand over to Louisa from the RSSB point of view.
Thank you, Robert. I'm trying to get my slides sorted. Experience a bit of a glitch where I was thrown out of the world of internet. How can it be possible this day and age? There we go.
Hello, can I help?
Okay. So building.
Okay.
There might be someone needing to mute the microphone. Okay, so building on what Robert just described, the working together in preparation for CP7 has included a number of actors, and clearly Network Rail and RSSB, as the recipient of public funding for research, have played a major role in these preparations still underway. From an RSSB point of view, our funding is not linked with control periods, is linked with spending review. It comes straight from the department and is of a different nature in many ways. So I thought of complementing what Robert said with the RSSB view and work that we are doing jointly to get ready to CP7, bearing in mind this different funding landscape. So you will recognize this. Robert presented you the Network Rail eye level view on it. This is slightly a more granular presentation from RSSB, but very similar in structure, in the sense of identifying those areas, those capabilities where we will be as a research program leading. You can see there operational safety being one, the principle and case for supporting and enabling automation, particularly given its link with standardization, is linked with standards, so with safety as well, and also some elements, some capabilities within the freight space. But the vast majority of the headings are for being involved and collaborate and with research that will be carried out by Network Rail, very much where it is about Network Rail assets and responsibility and cross-industry research, more sitting with RSSB. For what we are doing as in a similar way than what Robert has described, their more detailed planning. What we're doing is for each one of them, and I just brought up one, we are now in the process of really writing down what is RSSB role in each of them, and what are the research work streams that we plan to pursue, what are the implementation work streams. So where we in CP6 in previous years we brought things up to a point, but the journey needs to continue. They show to be very, very promising things, and we cannot stop there, and also allowing for reactive and emerging, because there is always the need to retain that flexibility. And we know by experience our program as a long history that which topic area, which capability are more likely to need that reactive emerging ability. And my choice also mindful of time and mindful of the fact that this is very much in developing and being discussed with a lot of cross-industry groups, our standards committee, our cross-industry safety groups. I thought of going to the basic of what we are trying to capture for each topic, and is really looking at recognizing what the RSSB program is there to deliver, why it exists in the first place, and therefore, when it comes to the making best use of today's asset, RSSB, as in the past, played a big role, often jointly with Network Rail and other at the interface, looking at how we can make the best of what we have. Recent example from the freight pipeline to gauging a structure to really make the most of those assets that are here and are here to stay with us for a long time. Possibly this bit of what we are there to deliver, this bit of our work is the one that has possibly less touch point with the private sector, with the supply chain, but is worth noting. And building on it, then a second role for the RSSB program is to support the development and testing of those incremental improvements that cut across organizational boundaries, and where Rob might take it to a certain level and perspective with the Network Rail team, but where we need to look at the wider system issues, and also importantly where market wouldn't really provide those incremental improvement itself, where therefore a Rosco Network Rail couldn't just go and buy those incremental improvement, and that is where the touch point really comes with the private sector. As Rob said, a long list of Network Rail driven and led, and where Network Rail is able to deliver those improvements and to work with yourself on those improvements without wider support and coordination, whilst other elements of it will require, and with Robert and team we are busy understanding those that require that coordination and the RSSB involvement. And last reason to be there is to look at more fundamental changes, things that are not yet happening on the rail industry. Maybe they are happening in other sectors, great. And how can we unlock those more fundamental changes is an industry challenge where RSSB fits in. Traditionally, we have played an important role in supporting pre-commercial development, particularly working with our university partners. But also then when those developments have reached the commercial stage, and yourself, the private sector, the supply chain are really driving it, is helping making sure that the standardization side of things, the safety analysis, the safety understanding matches and support the deployment of those solutions, as opposed to being an obstacle. So this is very much the spirit, the lenses, if you want, in which we are looking at all those 8 themes. We have already identified those where we clearly have a big role to play because of our core business, and those where we need to work together and contribute to wider cross-industry developments. So really, from myself, the takeaway points are that we are here, as we've been here in the past, to make sure that safety modeling, safety insight, safety understanding, safety data is there to support changes and to deliver an efficient railway, and standardization and guidance as a role to play as well in making sure that any development and any deployment thinks about a wider and a network scale rollout when applicable and possible. So we're here for that. We are very much developing the plan still. So if your work, your solutions, your initiatives are have touch point, are wondering and have question marks around safety implication, have question marks around standardization guidance, and any other touch point that you might picked up in this short presentation. We would love hearing from you, so just get in touch. And now it's Gareth, I believe, to give you the next steps and takeaway points from where Network Rail is going from having published a business plan last week.
Thank you, Louisa. Good morning, all. Gareth Evans, Head of Rail Technology, Network Rail, working for Robert. I suppose very briefly, one of the principles we've built into our Control Period 7 strategic plan for research, development, innovation is listening to feedback. We've done a lot of listening internally inside of Network Rail, but we've also, I think, been doing more listening in the wider industry, and the RIA Innovation Survey has been one great source of that feedback. One of the areas that I've heard consistently in the few months I've been doing this role is Network Rail needs to be clear about the requirements, where there are opportunities to conduct research, development, innovation, which Robert has outlined this morning. One of the ways we intend to do engage hopefully more effectively with everyone on the call in future is by reviewing how we use our challenge statements and taking a leaf out of, for example, Innovate's book, and run more focused competitions around our business requirements. So we've got some plans to do that. We're just working through sort of the mechanism by which we do that most effectively, so that you have confidence that when we publish our sets of requirements, you can clearly see kind of the steps to engage with us, the timescales for engaging with us, and what we can all expect as a sort of partnership approach out of the back end of any of these processes. But we are looking to not wait till CP7, but to start to introduce some of this alternative approach during the remainder of CP6 as well. Conscious that we need time for questions, so my last offer really is we definitely want to be more transparent about the content and priorities of our programme. So I'm very happy to kind of pick up opportunities to talk in more detail at greater depth about some of this over coming months with RIA members, and so I guess Milda, via yourselves, happy to, as we've got our regular catch-ups and relationship with RIA, to keep working on that to make sure that your members do keep getting visibility of what we're planning and feel like they've can engage with us in a more confident way in future. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Gareth, and apologies I didn't call you out for the introductions in the beginning of the call. So thank you for introducing yourself.
Absolutely fine.
Thank you. So it is time now for questions. Please do raise your hand and I will come in the order of the hand raised. So as Gareth mentioned, we have regular catch-ups with Network Rail's research and development team. We're looking next year, especially, we're looking for opportunities to get more partners involved, other infrastructure clients, rolling stock, train operating companies, really bring that innovation community together and to see how we help remove those barriers to innovation and make our country the best in innovating in rail. I don't see any hands coming up yet. I cannot believe that out of 63 people on the call, there's no questions, unless the speakers did such a good job of explaining the plans that there's no questions at all. Okay. Excellent. Yes. Good. So, sorry, just trying to figure out. Right, Justin, please come in.
Yeah, I've got a question. So, Robert, thank you very much for the presentation. Very interesting.
Can you please introduce yourself as well?
Of course, Justin Southcombe from Hitachi Rail. So you mentioned that Network Rail are currently building the project plans. I just wondered what the timescales were, and I'm guessing that they're in the order of the priorities that you highlighted, but could you just confirm that and just give some, maybe the high priorities? When do you expect to have all those project plans done? And I assume those will then drive the engagement with the supply chains.
Yeah, no, thanks, Justin. So yes, so we've started those discussions already, and I would think Gareth probably tell me if I'm wrong, but I think certainly by September we'll have some of those starting to come through. And I say some because I think rather than sort of develop the whole thing and then do it all in one block, we'll actually filter it through so that you can start seeing some of the priorities coming through. And part of that's because, you know, until we get the final determination, we're not going to be absolutely certain on the final figure, and that may end up with us tweaking our plans. The priorities won't change; the priorities will still be the priorities, but the extent of which we're able to progress with some of those is something that may change. So yeah, there's a bit of caution there, but it's not stopping us with the prioritization exercise we're doing. So by September, we'll be able to share things, if not before that. Hope that answers the question, Justin.
Thank you very much. And Ahmad Nawaz, please.
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yeah.
Jolly good. Yeah, Nawaz Ahmed from Siemens. I thought I'd make up for the lack of questions. I've got a few I'll bunch together. Firstly, there was talk about working across or gaining input across the industry. Any thoughts about getting best practice across sector? I'm from an electrical engineering background. Working safely in electrical systems is something that's not just unique to rail. There's loads of good practice already across a number of sectors. So I think there's quite a lot to learn if we widen the lens that we view from. So that was one part I'd be keen to get your feedback on. The other thing the title of the meeting is about, of the briefing is about co-funding opportunities. Is there any particular model on co-funding that you've got in mind? Is it, or are you open to something more creative in terms of developing the funding model being some type of concession over the lifetime of the asset? So there was that question around the funding arrangements for co-funding opportunities for the particular project. And then the last bit, and an important bit for innovation from my perspective, SMEs, I feel, are quite a hotbed of creativity and innovation. It's a common thing that I hear from SMEs. It's a difficult path to navigate to engage in and work with Network Rail when you're sitting in, a small to medium enterprise. Any thoughts on how you could turbocharge and find paths through for the SMEs out there who are innovating, have got technology that they like to bring into the railway?
Excellent questions. Now, as I've written them down in case the speakers forget the order. So
yeah, I might forget some. Yeah, I'm happy to take that. I'll also defer to Gareth as well. So I think in terms of cross-sector learning, absolutely. We've got regular discussions with National Highways, but also looking across the ways at some of the work that's been undertaken in defence to see what we can learn from that and discussions with them. I think in the past we've had collaboration with National Highways, but more sort of discussing some of our opportunities rather than doing something about it. So we will be actually progressing with looking at technologies where we've got common challenges and actually working together on resolving those. So a good example is some of the low carbon concrete solutions for bridges, for other structures. They've got similar challenges to us in terms of from a National Highways perspective, and some of the low carbon solutions for construction plants as well. So it's the areas that we're actually going to physically work on and actually find some solutions. We are looking far broad as well, working with our European colleagues and even further afield to look at what learnings we can get from those. So it's absolutely something that we're not sort of working in a very narrow space of just rail. We're looking much more broadly, and that's why we're looking particularly You mentioned about SMEs. SMEs from other sectors who probably haven't even worked in rail before. We've done some work over this current control period to engage with SMEs who have never worked in rail before, and with some real success. And we want to see more of that. So that's an area that, for us, engaging with SMEs, either through some of our tier ones, if I'm honest, or actually doing that individually through contests, where they can work very closely with Network Rail to actually develop the solution. Because what the SMEs are great, but actually, you know, they struggle with understanding the industry, and it is very complex. So holding their hand and working through that is something that we can do a lot better. But if we target it on particular problems, you know, problems that we've identified, then being able to navigate through that is a far better way of delivering some positive outcomes and growth as well. Gareth, is there anything you want to add on, particularly on the co-funding or the SME side?
Yeah, thanks, Robert, and thanks for your question, Nawaz. I think, yeah, the model we're looking at for how we run some of these focus competitions is being designed to reach the widest possible spread of potential solution providers. So we are going to be working likely with Connected Places, Catapult, and Innovate to make sure that we go beyond maybe some of our traditional boundaries in terms of supply chain when we're putting those problem statements out there. Hopefully that will also pick up some of the engagement with SMEs too, by doing that, because we are keen to look at everyone who can potentially offer, you know, solutions to those focus challenge statements. I know that CPC offers sort of expertise for SMEs to engage with a sector they're not necessarily familiar with too. So there are some benefits if we went down that route, because of how we run some of these competitions. So I'd like to think that some of those initiatives will start to help with some of the questions you've raised there, Nawaz, and make sure that we are, you know, reaching out to as broad a range of you know, potential partners as possible.
I think Louisa has something to add. Louisa.
Well, just a couple of thoughts. One on the outside rail cross-sectoral guidance. Absolutely, that is very much part of what we do always earlier on in looking at the challenge with my team, with Robert's team. But by all, and you know, also with organization like Sarah, when it comes to civils or others that are really good in bringing that best practice and guidance together. But if there are specific topics where you think we're missing a trick, by all means, you know, that is the type of research that can be done quickly and cheaply, is not and is so important to avoid duplication, etc. So any specific suggestions where you think we're missing a trick, let us know. On the SME point, allow me to be a tad provocative, particularly talking with the OEM. You know, the relationship sometimes is SME directly to Network Rail, but sometimes the relationship is a lot more complicated and involves the all tiers of suppliers. So again, and you know, there is unhappiness and happiness, both when it comes to trying to interface with Network Rail and trying to work your chain up the supplier tiers. So I think with Robert and Gareth, for example, we have at present a fantastic example of 3 tiers of supply chain involved in a development that we are doing, where everybody, including the university that started it off as a concept, are all involved, but it took sweat and blood. So again, I think that the recognition that is you know, sometimes is as simple as SME client, sometimes particularly unfortunately where RSSB tends to get involved, it's more complicated than that. And you know, again, any trick that you think we are missing or anything that you think we should do differently to line up that tiers of supplier would be really good to know.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We've got 2 more questions coming up, so I don't want to miss them out. Are you're happy with those answers, Nawaz? Excellent. Tim Lane, please come in.
Hello, thank you, Milda. Good day, everybody. Yeah, really interesting presentation. Great to hear that you want to engage with SMEs and describe outcomes rather than outputs, which is really great. The question from me really is, that can create some great work, but are you confident that you can encourage the wider Network Rail to be innovative in the way it accepts those solutions and changes its buying habits? Or do they just continue doing the same thing? There's some great technology out there, but in fact, it doesn't get used.
And Tim, if you don't mind introducing yourself as well.
Yeah, Tim Lane, formerly Network Rail, now independent.
Ah.
Yeah, hi Tim.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you. Yeah, you're obviously very busy as always. Yeah, no, it's a really good question, Tim. And so one of the it is one of the areas that we have identified as a real problem with within rail, and I don't think rail's alone, if I'm honest. I think deployment technologies across different sectors is a challenge. And earlier on, we actually had a call with our board, our strategy committee board within Network Rail, basically talking about exactly that. To me, there's a lot of behavioural and cultural challenges that we've got to get over. And the plan for this is for us to actually work really closely with the business, so that right from the off, as particularly where technologies are approaching a good level of maturity, that the business is actually putting their commitments in quite early on to say, this is what I'm actually going to take forward. Because otherwise we do get into this space of continuously trialing things because everyone's not quite comfortable until they've used it, and then they realize it works, and then the next place will try it as well and trial it, even though it's it's a railway. So there is a level of risk averseness. We've got to get over that. To me, you won't fix it in a year. You won't fix it it's a journey, and we've got to encourage and engage to get that confidence and trust. And we'll do that through relationships, because I think that's how we're embedded and wedded in with the regions, and also with the operators, talking really closely with them. We can bring suppliers, SMEs into the fold as part of those partnerships to really help to say, right, now we've all agreed, we can then start rolling this out with a lot more confidence, in terms of what we'll get. But we've got to trust the process. And we'll do something differently to what we've done in the past.
Thanks, Rob. That's very encouraging.
Thank you very much, Tim. And Julian Stowe, please.
Good morning, everybody. Julian Stowe from the University of Huddersfield. I guess my question might follow on from Tim's a bit. I've heard and read a lot about the increasing role of Network Rail's regions in CP7 R&D delivery. And I'm just wondering if you could say a few words about what that might look like from the point of view of suppliers of R&D.
Interesting, Julian. So I think the regions are, devolution is really important. And I think in terms of where we're going with devolution, some of the research and even some of the lower sort of academic projects and research that we need to undertake to identify specific problems in each region, we're really working with the regions to try and encourage that, and encourage closer connection with with academia to drive what particular challenges you have. There's a much broader piece of work we're doing with academia, which is more driven by my team in R&D. So that's looking at some of the national challenges that we have. But I don't want to stop the regions looking at some of the smaller challenges they have, which are really specific to them. And we've got a wealth of academic institutions. Very recently we did this whole catalogue of what facilities do we have across the UK, and it's massive. It's absolutely massive. And every single region has got a really good university around them that can help them to drive some of that. So we're trying to push a lot more work in that area and driving the regions to use the framework to achieve that. The main thing, the reason why we're doing this in a more coordinated way is what I don't want to do is for Southampton to do a piece of work that Loughborough are doing, which is exactly the same piece of work. So we want to be much more coherent in how we do that, and engaging it through the framework is one really good way of doing that. The other thing for me is you know, we probably don't use academic institutions enough to validate some of the products and solutions that have been developed. We do a lot of research around the, you know, the science around some of the decisions and limits that we've developed in the past, and some of the historic standards that we have. And perhaps we don't do enough to actually use those same institutions to actually check and validate the outputs we get from it. So I really want to make sure that some of that work actually filters down, and we're going through and validating the developments that are coming through, and that will be working with the regions, but also with the supply chain. I hope that answers your question, Julie.
Thank you very much. We've got 2 more questions in 8 minutes, so I'll try and, oh, Gareth, you want to come in? Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to, if I could add very briefly for Julian, I think the routes and regions are already quite well embedded in the RD&I decision making, because they have representatives on all the decision making panels that test the technical and the business benefits of ideas that come forward. I think what we're going to do is encourage bringing more ideas to those panels, so that there's the 5 regional views on ideas that each of them bring forward, to get that more coordinated and strategic look at some of that technology development.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So if I can invite Donia Halizadeh, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. Donia Halizadeh from the University of Surrey. So my question, perhaps not directly related to CP7, but the discussions around association agreement and how that may influence the plans with the shift to rail, and how that may or may not influence CP7, if possible.
I'll take that one. So yeah, there is a lot of politics with this, and not one I can intervene. Sadly, I'd love to intervene, but we have, and I communicate with our European colleagues in rail quite regularly. To you know, every couple of weeks we have a session, usually on a Friday, so we keep really very close to them and to understand where we are, and until we get the association deal sorted, we're obviously on the periphery, so it's something we're really close on. But what we are doing is we've been working very closely individually, so the likes of Swiss Rail, ProRail, SNCF, and we've been talking to ADIF in Spain, and also Traffic Forget and OBB in Austria, so in Sweden and Austria. So there are a number of different touch points that we continue to engage on. I know that the European rail infrastructure managers are pretty frustrated themselves, because they want to use the academic institutions we have. So they recognise there's a wealth of expertise there, and they're missing out on it at the moment. So they're keen to release that. And once the particular Windsor Agreement is hopefully ratified and goes through European Parliament and our own Parliament, we'll get there. We are looking at alternatives. So the government recently published a pioneer programme, which it could be an alternative horizon. We don't quite know where that's going to go, but we're working very closely with government on that, and we're keeping our eye on that, because I think that offers us broader opportunities, not just within Europe, but broader than that as well, across other parts of the world. So we'll be using that to as leverage to try and get us more involved. What's interesting is, from a rail point of view, we are on the periphery, but actually in other sectors, aviation, marine, they're absolutely wedded within Europe. So I think it's just a rail problem, and we just need to find ways to unlock that. And that's what we're working on. So it's watch this space. There's huge amounts of activity on this Windsor Agreement going on. We may get an agreement this, probably just this side of or the other side of summer, possibly. But yeah, just watch this space, because it is moving quite quickly.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid I think we only will have time for Lewis Gill question, and then we'll have to wrap up. Sorry, Simon. Lewis.
Okay. Hi there, it's Lewis Gill from Connex. I'm really interested in the presentation today, so thank you. 2 things I wanted to just raise. On the design competitions, I think it's a great way of getting SMEs in. Have you thought about how you go beyond that, in terms of, could you set success criteria that would allow for kind of rollout and moving forward beyond the R&D phase? And then second, when I've worked before with Network Rail. We've done co-development. I think it's a great way of getting good solutions that fit. But often the question comes up of IPR and you know, whether the SME can share it. Do you have a position on where Network Rail and RSSB sit on, you know, if somebody works with in a co-development, you know, what would they want with that IPR or in the future?
Yeah, happy to take this. Hi, Lewis. So yeah, I think we are looking at different procurement approaches into CP7. I'm a big believer of us moving forward with a lot of our developing the innovation, and particularly when we work with SMEs, the ability to scale up and get growth in deploying those technologies is huge for those businesses. You know, it can either make them succeed or fail, and that's important for us. And if we're going to energize that part of the system, we have to make sure that there is a route to market. So yes, there's a number of procurement approaches we're taking with our colleagues in procurement to enable us to do that, and you know, set some maybe benchmark some target volumes that help the regions to just buy and go, rather than looking at a national framework. Because again, you know, this is devolution. They one route may really want to take the solution and run with it, and others may be a bit slow. I don't want to jeopardize one region because the rest are a little bit slow to it. So we've got to find ways in which we can unlock that. In terms of the other aspects of what we do with the wider ways in terms of how we tackle some of the contests and competitions, IPR is important to Network Rail because, you know, we do invest a lot of time. We invested you know, some of our own engineers who are doing other things who come and will put their time to it. But it's important to us, important that we do have that joined up approach, and that we do help. There's no point us standing aside and come up with a solution and we look at it and go, yeah, it's not quite right, go back and keep working on the solution. We've got to work with you. So, you know, if it's background RPR, absolutely fine. But if we're looking at foreground, there's an opportunity for us to collaborate. And absolutely, we're really interested in that sort of those sort of technologies actually being scaled up. And if it's, you know, internationally, we totally support that because it's an investment opportunity for us as well. So yeah, we're not shy of that. A lot of our contracts do enable that. So we probably need to refine them to make them a bit, you know, a little bit broader, when we get products approved that it can scale up a lot wider.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. And Simon, I saw posted his question in the chat. I'm afraid we don't have time to address it.
Yeah, we'll respond to that. Don't worry. Yeah.
Excellent. Sorry, Robert, did you say you want to respond now or you respond later?
No, I'll send a response to that because I know we're out of time. So yeah.
All right, excellent. So thank you very much for all who joined. We will share the recording of the webinar in the next week's Tech Talk. That's our membership newsletter, or we'll post it on our YouTube channel as well. And we hope to see you at our next Unlocking Innovation event. We have quite a big plans brewing for next year to bring in more innovators and address all of these issues discussed today, and really help to understand the kind of the funding, research, development, implementation, or partnerships, procurement, product acceptance, all of these issues to 5 series of events, and we'll share the details later in the year. So thank you again, and I hope you will have a good bank holiday. Have a good day.
Thank you, Milda. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Milda. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.